This is something most people don't think about until it's missing. In this episode, I sit down with therapist and speaker Edie Weinstein to talk about how safe, consensual human connection can deeply impact mental health, trauma, healing, grief, nervous system regulation, and even the way we steer ourselves in relationships. We also explore body autonomy, touch deprivation, boundaries in therapy, and why something as simple as a hug can become part of healing. So buckle in and listen down for a lot of great information and an amazing conversation with an amazing woman. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Lunar Counseling Podcast. I'm your host, Kiara Brown, an LPC, EMDR Certified Therapist, Certified Hypnotherapist, and the owner of Lunar Counseling. This podcast is a space for real conversations with therapists, healers, and guides about the deeper layers of mental health, trauma, embodiment, and what it truly means to heal in integrated and sustainable ways. Today, I am so pleased to welcome Edie Weinstein to the podcast. Edie is an internationally recognized journalist, interviewer, author, and editor, as well as a dynamic speaker, licensed social worker, interfaith minister, and a bliss coach. Her work is known for blending creativity, compassion, and deep human connection. Edie is also a certified laughter yoga leader, certified cuddle party facilitator, event producer, and what she lovingly calls a cosmic concierge. She's the founder of Hug Mobsters, Armed with Love, a global movement offering free hug events around the world, both planned and spontaneous, as a reminder of the healing power of human connection and touch. She's also delivered a TED Talk, a TEDx talk titled Overcoming the Taboo of Touch, where she explored the importance of safe, consensual touch in a world where many people are profoundly touch deprived. Through her speaking, writing, and community work, Edie addresses topics including wellness, relationships, trauma recovery, addiction, mental health, spirituality, sexuality, and grief, helping people reconnect with themselves and with one another in authentic and meaningful ways. So, Edie, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me.
Yes. So, let's ask everyone, what brought you into the therapy space?
Let me see. I was raised in a family where there was a lot of love, a lot of nurturing, a lot of listening. My parents encouraged education, reading. I used to say that I carried books around with me like they were teddy bears. And among my friends, I was the go-to person where people would come to for advice, for listening. It never occurred to me until probably my senior year in high school that would be a career. Because back in the 1960s and 70s, when I was raised, women were mostly, besides being wives and moms, nurses, teachers, clerical people like secretaries. I don't think I ever met a therapist in my life. And when it was time to consider a major, I said, okay, psychology, that would be interesting. And I had a women's studies minor. And I went to Glassboro State College, which is called Rowan University in New Jersey. And I worked at an outpatient crisis intervention center called Together Incorporated. And it included a 24-hour crisis intervention suicide prevention hotline, a youth shelter, a rape crisis program, and a women's program. And I did the first 2 years there as a volunteer. And I don't remember, I think it might have been before I graduated. I took a paid position there as well. And I love being what I call a privileged listener, which is what I think all therapists are. And I lump them in with cab drivers, bartenders, hairdressers, clergy, people that are trusted listeners.
Yeah. What is the journey? I can only imagine kind of navigating that kind of dynamic to back in the 60s and 70s where there weren't a lot of professional women because it was like you guys said, like nurses, teachers, clerical work, all that stuff. So kind of we're going against the grain in a way. If you're a little cheerleader, it's so cool.
Yeah, they are obviously professions that that you just mentioned. But again, I don't think I knew anybody who was a social worker, therapist. Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I had a cousin who was a social worker in a psychiatric hospital, but I don't think we ever talked about it. So she didn't influence me to become a social worker. And the social work degree came 2 years after, actually social work education came 2 years after I graduated from college, because I realized that I probably wasn't going to be able to do anything with just a bachelor's degree in psychology. And in between, I worked as a lifeguard, a server at restaurants, a massage practitioner. What else did I do back then? Oh, I was a practice patient at a hospital called Hahnemann in Philly, which has since closed. So I did a number of different things. And then I said, you know what? I better go back to school and kind of fluff up the skill set. And I went to Rutgers University in Camden, 2-year program, and I graduated with a master's degree in social work in 1985. And I lovingly call the degree MSW, Master of Saving the World. And those of us in the field often feel like that's our path. It's really not. That's the codependent way of saying it.
Yeah. But it's just like in the social work field, there's like a whole big emphasis on community outreach, like advocacy. Like that's like the biggest tenet in social work. Versus LPC is more like just one-on-one. I mean, also we do our own we also have to do advocacy work, but like it's not the biggest thing as an LPC.
It's a little different for me. I've worked in a number of different settings beside the one I mentioned. I've worked inpatient psych for 12 years in a psychiatric hospital. I worked for 2 years in outpatient drug and alcohol, community mental health, home care, nursing home. I did what's called wraparound, which is family-based services in the home for children. The one form of social work I could never in a million years do is child welfare. It would be too heartbreaking. And I so admire the people that do that. So I consider no matter what form it takes for me to be advocacy, to be social justice. So right now I'm an outpatient therapist in a group practice. And a lot of my clients come to me with issues revolving around the state of the world. So I need to be able to shift gears and address their fears about what's happening now.
Yeah. That is
so. It is.
You've had a very like broad spectrum of experiences, which is like super cool. Which one do you feel like taught you the most about like yourself and what you wanted to do with your life?
About myself, I would say that the one that I did the longest, 12 years, was in a psychiatric hospital. So it taught me about stress management. It taught me about being spontaneous, like on the spot, dealing with crisis. I fortunately have never been assaulted, but some of my coworkers were. I had one experience where a patient went to swing at me and I went like that, grabbed her fist. I said, "You don't want to do that. Please put that down." Another time I was in my office with a very angry patient who was cursing and yelling and carrying on. And I said, "I don't get paid well enough to get cursed out by you. Knock it off." And he looks at me and he says, "Then you better get a different job." And I said, "No, you don't get it. I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the one that helps you get out of here. I'm speaking to you respectfully. I expect the same from you." And he gets up and he rumbles his way out the door. So the next day he comes in with his head down, apologetic. He said, "I'm really sorry. I overreacted. I was really mad and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I took it out on you." And I said, "Okay, fresh start. Let's do over." So what it taught me was that in the midst of crisis, I don't fall apart. And that's always been my MO. I take after my mother, who would say that she handled crisis well and then she fell apart afterward. I never saw her fall apart. I usually fall apart. I just say, "Okay, take a deep breath, be in the present moment, deal with what's right in front of you, and then go take care of yourself after."
I that the answer is a part, particularly inpatient. So what was like your like, go-to self-care routine after dealing with that intense work day in, day out?
It's the same thing that I do now. I talk to kindred spirits. I've been in therapy off and on over the years. I'm not now. And that's helpful. I think every therapist needs to have a therapist, someone to talk to. And it's a particular genre, actually. I'm what I call a therapist. I have a few therapists who I see in my practice because we're really good at not tricking. If you see somebody who isn't astute about the ins and outs, it's really helpful to have a therapist that can call you on it. So I've been doing this 47 years. I've been a therapist in one form or another for 47 years. And what helps me, again, talking to kindred spirits who get it, obviously without divulging confidential information. What I say is confidentiality reigns supreme, even before HIPAA. I don't give details. What else? Fitness. I'm going to the gym after this. Working out, being in nature, being with my adorable grandchildren. They liven me up a bit. Hugs that if you want, we can talk more about hug mobsters. Massage, either self-massage. And this is a really good one. I don't know what it does, but if you're in a session and you're starting to feel a little like this, I've started rubbing the inside of me on my palm with my thumb. I have to look it up and see what it neurologically, why that works, but it feels good. What else? Writing, reading, listening to music, dancing, all of those things help.
Really cool.
And drinking lots of water.
Phil, on EMDR, there's a thing called acupressure breathing where like you massage like right here and you go like
too.
that. So,
Yeah.
so maybe that's maybe instead of palm print, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I'll have to look at it. I've
close.
done this pain, but this just feels more soothing. I'm not sure why. It's whatever works. And nobody will know if you're on telehealth, nobody's going to know you're doing it. And if if you're in person with clients, they're not going to. And if they say, what are you doing? And I teach them. Everything in my mind is a teachable moment. So this would be one of those.
That's really cool. But yeah, so you run up to your hug mobster things that you created. What can you tell me about what sparked that idea for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Valentine's Day weekend, 2014, I brought a group of friends to 30th Street Station, which is a big train station in Philly, for a free hugs flash mob. And it was the day after Valentine's Day. So it was February 15th of 2014. And there were 12 of us. And at noon, we unleashed ourselves on the station. One of our friends is a musician. So we walked around with his guitar playing the Supertramp song, Give a Little Bit. Do you know that one? Give a little bit of your love to me. I don't know how, I should ask him how many times he played it in an hour. And we walked around and asked people if they would like a hug. And if they said yes, we hugged them. If they said no, we said, okay, thank you for taking care of yourself. And I always say, hug somebody, even if it's just you. And the most memorable aspect of that was that an Iraq war vet approached us and said he was the only survivor of his platoon and he had survivor's guilt. And he said, I thought about ending my life until just now when I met you people. You give me hope. Can I join you? Of course, we all cried, gave him his free hug sign, and he was off to the races. Now, all these years later, we're talking almost 12 years later, a little more than 12 years later, I don't know what happened to him. My prayer is that he found his hope and that he's still out there giving hugs. And so I thought, how cool is that? Hugs save lives. Friends started calling us hug mobsters, hug mob, flash mob, Yeah. And I added the tagline, armed with love, because when you think about mobsters, like guns, drugs, violence, and I didn't want that association. So I said, hug mobsters armed with love. And one of my friends a few years later started calling me the mother hugger. So I thought that was cute. 5 months after that, on the way home from the gym, I had a heart attack. I was 55 years old and I thought I was taking care of myself. I was working out 5 or 6 days a week, but I was sleeping maybe 5 or 6 hours a night. This was when I was working in an outpatient substance abuse program. Go figure, working with people with addictions. I was literally addicted to work. I was working 12 to 14-hour days. And it wasn't just a strong work ethic. It was, I got to work. I got to support myself. I got all of that. And I can't say no. I remember I think it was Christmas Eve. I was facilitating a women's support group. And I said to the women in the group, there were about a dozen of them there. I said, then I will be there Christmas Eve. If you're committed to this, I will be there for you and we'll have our group. 2 showed up. And I thought, I got to learn to set some boundaries. And I was there for the 2 women that were there and we had a wonderful group. And so I started realizing that I was literally addicted to work. And this is an important PSA. Women's heart attack symptoms are very different from men's. Excuse me. I had jaw pain and tightness, like I couldn't move my jaw, torrential sweats, searing heartburn pain front and back, palpitations, lightheadedness, dizziness. I didn't pull over and call 911. I drove home and I didn't call 911. I picked up the phone, called my office and said, I'm not feeling very well. Can you cancel my clients for the day? I still didn't call 911 in the car and drove to the hospital. If I ever do that, anybody. I am so lucky that I didn't have an accident. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't crash my car. I stumbled into the ER and said, I think I'm having a heart attack. They whisked me up to the cardiac cath lab and they inserted a stent. I had a fully occluded LAD, the Widowmaker heart attack. And the stent propped it back up, opened it back up. And when I talked to the doctor afterward, he said, don't let this happen again. I said, how did it happen in the first place? He said, first of all, tell me about your lifestyle. And I did. And I also told him that my mother had died a few years earlier of congestive heart failure. My sister had 2 heart attacks prior. And he said, your cholesterol's through the roof. Your blood pressure is through the roof. We're going to put you on meds. You're going to change your routine. Instead of 5 or 6 days a week working out, you're going to do 3 in cardiac rehab. That's all my insurance would pay for anyway. And you're going to have monitored workouts. And my sister and my niece came over, went through my refrigerator and cabinets and said, this has to go, this has to go. You can't have, this is too high in sodium. So it was a fresh start. And as part of my cardiac rehab, I walked through Doylestown, Pennsylvania, little town near where I live. Excuse me. And I said, why don't I combine the hugging with the walking? So I did. I started calling them free hug strolls. And I asked friends to join me. Sometimes I was with other people. Sometimes I just did it spontaneously myself. And I walked around with a sign that had, I'm going to show you this thing here, this little heart thing. See it? A
Yeah.
friend of mine for me from, I think, IKEA, but our logo was a little heart, hands, and it said, hug Mobsters armed with love. And since then, we're talking about almost 12 years ago, since I started the free hug strolls, I've hugged out thousands and thousands of people in the United States, in Canada. And then in 2018, I took my trip of a lifetime to Ireland and I hugged my way through Ireland. And it was just remarkable. And when I did the TEDx talk in 2022, I told the Hug Mobster story as well. So if people want to check that out, it's called Overcoming the Taboo of Touch.
Wow,
And it ties in with something that I think would be of interest to your viewers, because we were taught, I don't know about your generation, but we were taught, oh, you don't touch your clients. You certainly don't hug your clients. Oh, boundaries. And what if they have had sexual trauma, abuse trauma? But the TEDx talk turns it on its head. And it talks about, with importance of consent, is it okay to hug your clients? Some of my clients will ask for a hug every session, at the end of every session, and I gladly offer it to them. And for a therapist, it is about maintaining your boundaries. Don't hug somebody without permission. I've had clients over the years who were crying and were sitting, say, can I sit next to you? And I said, sure. And they didn't ask me to hold their hand while they were crying or hold them while I don't have a problem with that. But again, it's up to the person, the client, the therapist. I do have to say that men, for better or for worse, in our culture, have to be a little more careful with that than women.
That's
Because,
very true.
yeah, because some of the perpetrators in clients' lives were men. And I'm not saying that women don't perpetrate, because unfortunately they do too. Yeah. So touch is a therapeutic issue.
But it really is. And I think you bring it up too, because you're right. It's all about consent too. And I can also imagine, in a way, like, I used to work with kids in a school setting. I also get, you don't touch them, like, it's hands off all the time. But I've also had like really young kids that like had a really bad day. Like, I just want to hug. And so because I was like, and I didn't want to say no, but I had to say no because of being in the school setting. I didn't want like anything else coming from it. But yeah, it's definitely like you have to have the consent for all of it.
Right. It depends on the environment. A number of years ago, I was filling in for a school guidance counselor, K through 6, in a district near me. And every day, the teachers, the counselors, the staff, whoever was available, would greet the kids at the door when they get off the bus or when their parents drop them off. And if they wanted, we'd give them side hugs, not frontal hugs. We were allowed to give them side hugs. And I was told by the principal at one of the schools that when the kids are in your office, make sure you're facing the door, because there's a little window in the door. Make sure you're facing the door and that the kids their back is facing the door, and keep the door open. I said, I'll do the first one, but I won't do the second one, because These kids are coming into my office sharing confidential information. So no, I'm not going to close it. I'm not going to leave the door open. If we just have a casual conversation, yeah. But if they say, I want to talk to you about something at home or something in the classroom, close the door.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the therapist's ethics and values and morals. And as social workers, we follow the NASW, National Association of Social Workers, code of ethics. And that's part of it.
And yeah, it definitely makes sense. Like everything has to be consensual. Like you have to make sure everything is like obviously above board because like we're working with
Yep.
people's deepest traumas and don't limitize them.
Yep.
But I do the fact that people are asking for that connection. It's actually, and it's also a thing too, it could be really helpful for someone that was assaulted to actually have the control and bring them back their autonomy. I'm asking for this. I'm asking for
Yep.
you to do this for me. And it's on my terms.
And let them be the last one to let go. Let them, obviously, I have limited time between sessions, so I can't stand there for 10 minutes and hug somebody at the end of the session, but they know that I'm a safe person to hug. And I did have a session last week with a family with a 6-year-old, and we were reading a book called The Hug That Got Stuck. It's a very cool little book if you want to look it up. And at the end of the session, before she left, they said, "Can we hug?" And she said, "Yes." And I got down on my, and I looked at mom, and mom nodded, and we hugged, and it was just delightful. So again, it depends on the setting. It depends on the culture of where you, I don't mean ethnic culture, ethos culture of where you work, whether touching clients with consent, non-sexual is acceptable. So it varies from location to location.
Yeah, that's so true. It kind of reminds me of an episode here we got at Disney, how the characters aren't allowed to let go until the kids let go. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah.
I haven't been to Disney World since I was 7, but I've heard the stories.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I've ever hugged a Disney character. That would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Had one of the princesses or whoever your favorite character is. But yeah, that's really cool. So for the Hug and Mobster piece, did you turn it? Is it like a nonprofit? It's just like
there's no money. Yeah. There's no money involved at all. There's no funding for it. I often thought that I should get a grant to do it because I would love to. I love my job. I love working, but wouldn't it be cool to get a grant to hug, to be able to do that? But no, it's just Hug Mobsters Armed with Love. And I also do what's called free mom hugs. Have you ever heard of that? Okay. So for those who don't know, Sarah Cunningham is a woman in Oklahoma City. And 14, 15, I forget how many years ago, her son came out to her as a gay man. And Sarah was an evangelical Christian at the time. And it just, turned her world upside down. And she thought, how can I choose between God and my son? And then she realized, I don't have to. So one day he invited her to go to a Pride Fest, and she made a button that said free mom hugs with the idea that often parents don't hug their children when they come out to them. And she says by the end of the day, she was covered in tears and glitter, and she knew that she had a movement on her hands. So she started doing this any and everywhere she could. She left her non-affirming church, became an ordained minister herself, and officiates at same-sex weddings. She's also what she calls a stand-in mom at same-sex weddings. She says, if your mother won't be there, I will, and I'll even bring the bubbles. So I don't know how far she'll travel. And Jamie Lee Curtis heard about her story, and they're making a movie about Sarah's life. And she's just remarkable. So I do free mom hugs as well. And there are a number of Pride Fests. June is Pride Month. So there are done like 3 or 4 of them in my immediate area for several years. And they're also free dad hugs. So men have shirts that say free dad hugs as well.
Cool. Did your spouse participate with them at all? Did your
What?
partner
Sorry.
did your partner like participate in the hug events with you?
My partner. I'm not sure who you're talking about.
You have a spouse, a husband.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, I'm widowed. I'm widowed. I don't have a partner. But he probably would have He was a little more shy than I was, but he would probably have done it too. Yeah, I would imagine he would. But I have a lot of friends that are very huggy people, but would never go out and hug strangers because it feels scary for them. And a question I often get asked is, how do you handle people saying no? And I say, again, like I said in the original talk about founding Hug Mobsters, is that everybody has the right to body sovereignty. They have the right to say no. And I I don't ask them, why are you saying no? And I don't feel rejected. I just say, okay, thank you, and move on. The other thing when we're talking about kiddos is that when they're children with the adults that I'm hugging, I'll say to the adult, if it's okay with you and okay with your child, may I hug your child? If the parent says yes, the child says no, I don't hug them. And I say to the child, you have the right not to be touched if you don't want to be touched. So it's a lesson for the parents too, because kids often don't have bodily autonomy. You say nobody hugs you. Even in my family, I've got two adorable grandchildren, but they're not required to hug any of us, including mom and dad, including me, including the other grandparents. We just tell them, you could say no to a hug. Sometimes they don't. And I watch them. And with my granddaughter, 2 months a week, we started out, I think 5 mornings a week that I was with the kids. And when I was ready to leave and the other shift took over, either the other grandparents or my daughter-in-law's sister, and I could go to work. I would say, you want a hug? No, but I'm out the door. They're all over me. So kids need to know they have a choice.
Yeah, that's how
So
I do with my kids too. I'll ask them if they want to give like my parents a hug or if they want to give their other grandparents a hug. And sometimes I'll say no. I'll say, okay, then let's say thank you and then let's
yeah,
and then usually they end up hugging them anyway.
yeah, we do high fives, we do fist bumps. As long as we're acknowledged coming and going, that's fine. They can't ignore us, but they don't have to hug if they don't want to. But they're pretty cuddly kids. So that's a blessing. That's one way that I take care of myself too, is spend time with them. I tell them that they're my two favorite people on the planet, and they believe me.
That is adorable. I have how many? I can't even keep track sometimes of how many nephews I have, and letting them all just having that space to just like they can come to me if they want to, they don't have to. And just be like, yeah, I'm here for you. I'm your aunt. If you want to give me a hug, you can. If you don't, it's fine. I never force the hugs.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, and I think children need to know that there are safe adults in their lives. I was really blessed to grow up in what I call a touchy-feely family. My at one point or another, each of my grandmothers lived with us. My parents were very affectionate with each other, with my sister and me. There were always hugs and kisses coming and going. So I grew up with that as I thought everybody's family was like that. Sadly not. So what I say, and it's part of the 10X talk too, is that in some people's lives, touch was either non-existent, limited, coercive, abusive, or sexual. And when I teach people about touch by consent, it's none of those things. That hugs should be plentiful. They should be by consent. They should certainly be non-sexual. We're talking about children. And what else was I going to say about that? Again, let the other person, no matter how old they are, be the first one to let go. When they're ready, they let go.
That is
Yeah.
so true.
How old are your children?
5 and 3.
Okay. My granddaughter's 3, my grandson is 6, close in age. And
Yeah.
it's so amazing to watch how their little minds work and how they think about things. And it's just fascinating. And I think about when I don't remember being 3, but I remember being 6. And their minds are, they just like little sponges. My grandson likes watching the show called Number Blocks. I don't know if your kids watch it.
Yes.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids
And
love it.
yeah, he's sitting there watching it before school, and he's counting up all the numbers. And I said, do you know that I didn't learn multiplication and division till I was in 4th grade, and you're learning it in kindergarten? I said, imagine how smart your brain's going to be. And he loves watching that. And they're very creative. They love art. They're very physical, athletic. They're very social kids, very comfortable out there in the world, making friends. So it's amazing to watch them develop and grow.
Oh yeah, it is so cool. Like my son, he's the oldest. He loves anything involving nature. We watch so many nature documentaries. We read so many nature books. Like, he doesn't like the standard, like, little kid books. He wants us to read like the in-depth science book. Like, we have a book this thick about animals that we read almost every night, about a different animal each night. He's like, he's all into that. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are. My grandkids are too. We took my daughter-in-law. I took them to. It's a place in our area called the Barn, and they have all kinds of animals that you can touch. And he was holding corn snake. It was this big, and he says, "Look, Bubby's Yiddish for grandmother. Bubby, you hold the snake." I said, "No, you hold it. I'll pet it." I'm like, I said, "Boy, you are brave." And they like going to petting zoos. They love reading about and learning about nature. They have their own little garden in the yard, and they plant things. They take bugs and put them back in the grass. They don't kill them. They move, as long as they're safe spiders, they'll move spiders into the grass. So they have an appreciation for nature, which their hippie grandmother appreciates too.
it's, yeah, that's definitely really cool. I know my son's anxious to go hunting because my husband's a big hunter, so he wants to do that. But you were teaching him like all the safety things now. But, oh my gosh, that's so cool. What's like on the next step of like your journey? Because even in the field for so long.
I have no clue. I'm not going to be able to afford to retire anytime soon. I'm 67, and what I say, as long as I can think, type, because we do electronic medical records, and speak, I can say I can be a therapist. So I have no idea. In addition to therapy, though, I am a speaker. I am a journalist. I write articles about relationships, spirituality, peace and social justice. What else? Everything that I do is because I want a better world for the next generation. It's not just my grandkids, but your kids and everybody's kids. So a lot of my work is that I've fulfilled a lot of bucket list items. So I don't know. I'm just open to whatever comes along. I love what I do. I love where I work. My boss and my coworkers are phenomenal. I enjoy and appreciate time with my clients, and they keep me on my toes. I'm what I call a seat of the pants therapist. So whatever somebody says, I'm able to spontaneously say, okay, let's think about to myself. Let's think about what would best serve them at the moment. And I encourage people to listen to podcasts. I encourage them to read books and articles, watch TED Talks, movies that have to do with whatever subject we're talking about here. Two of my favorite movies that I always recommend to kids too, but adults as well, is the Inside Out movies. Have you seen those?
Yeah, those
Disney
are
picks up the feelings.
yeah.
And I knew from the very beginning that they had to have had therapists as advisors in the writer's room because everything is so nuanced and ties into the emotions that we all feel. And I was listening to an interview on NPR when the second movie was about to come out, and I think one of the people they interviewed was an advisor for the films. So it's good to know that there are in mainstream entertainment, there are things that apply to what goes on in the human mind and relationally, behaviorally. So I recommend stuff like that in my practice as well.
It's so cool. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and like even like join the Hug Mobsters? Yeah.
First of all, my website is www.opti hyphen mystic optimistical opti hyphen mystical.com. Where that came from was either in a meditation or a dream where I heard you're not just an optimist, you're an optimistic who sees the world through the eyes of possibility. So it's optimistical.com is the website. And I am based in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, but anybody could do free hugs anywhere. They don't need my consent to do it. But if you're interested in free mom hugs, I think it's freemomhugs.org, and they are an organization. So you can learn more about Sarah's story and about how to do free mom hugs or free dad hugs in your area.
That is so cool. Yeah, and it's interesting, like, we're just, like, on the opposite side of the state. I'm by Pittsburgh, and you're out by Philly, which is so cool.
So one of my new favorite shows The Pit. Did you ever see it?
Yes, I'm all caught up. I had a
Oh, yeah.
client recommend it, and I've watched it.
Mhm.
And yeah,
And and what I appreciate about it, I've never worked in an ER, but I did med surge social work when I was in grad school. It was one of my internships. And I appreciate the way that healthcare workers, regardless of what the label is, how they're honored. And I appreciate the way that they bring social workers into the mix, that we're not just an afterthought, that social workers are an integral part of the treatment team in that show. So, folks, if you haven't watched it, it's on HBO Max. And I actually got that streaming service just so I could watch it. And it just melts my heart every time. And it goes so fast. The show is over.
this is crazy. But you're right. Like I do love how they have the social workers, like, or it's almost like one of the like first of defense, like something with the kid, social worker. Someone is unhoused, social worker. Someone needs help with insurance, social worker. Like all the
Yep.
like getting them connected is like
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And your city is lovely. I was there on my way back from the 10X talk, which was in Ohio. My best friend and I drove through Pittsburgh on the way back. So, of course, we had to stop at the Heinz Museum and I had to see the Mr. Rogers exhibit, of course. And then we posed by the big bottle of ketchup, which was
Yeah.
fun. And then we also, a sad stop, we went to the Tree of Life Synagogue to honor the people who had died there. We said Kaddish, which is a Jewish mourner's prayer. And it was, have you ever been someplace where it just feels sacred? It feels something happened there, but the energy isn't just mournful. It felt uplifting as well. So we did get to go there too. And then there was a contract since it was October. I think would there been a Steelers game in October? Yeah, probably.
Like
Yeah. So we drove through because my son is a Steelers fan, and we were looking for some kind of merch, like Steelers merch, and we didn't find anything near the hotel where we were staying. So we were driving around the stadium, and the Pittsburgh. No, I'm not dissing Philly fans, but you guys are so polite. They weren't rowdy. They were. I don't remember whether they won or lost the game, but Eagles fans are definitely rowdier. They're on the way out of the stadium.
there usually aren't riots if the Steelers or Penguins or Pirates lose. It's just pretty much just everyone's not darn it or like expletive, whatever they
Right.
want to put in and put it into
Yeah.
it.
Yep. Eagles fans are not that forgiving. No. But I'm glad that you live someplace beautiful like that. Just a wonderful community.
It has been amazing. Thank you so much. And I'll put all of your links and everything below too for people to easily find you.
Okay.
But this has been so amazing. And I just love the movements that you started and just like how you talk about the consensual piece of touch and how like how people are so touch deprived a lot of
Mhm.
times and depending on the
Mhm.
situation. And like you help them heal from that. It's just amazing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. Pleasure. And here's one thing to do before. Okay, we're going to do self hugs. Okay. So if you can wrap your arms around yourself and think about somebody that you haven't hugged in a long time. This got me through the pandemic. I did a lot of self. Okay. And just imagine. And I encourage everybody every day to hug somebody, and not just yourself, but including yourself, because we need it, especially therapists. Boy, do we need hugs. So make sure you get you know, your requisite number of hugs every day.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thanks to you.